Hi, you may have seen me before. My name's Kristin Costas, Director of Product Management at Lytics and Chapter Lead for the San Diego chapter of Women in Product. Welcome back to the Leadership That Illuminates stage. Today, we're going to hear from three fantastic product leaders. Before we do that, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for this event. Without them, this would not be possible. We're going to continue our discussions around uh, leadership that illuminates on this stage. And we're going to welcome to the stage first, Rosa Gonzalez Welton. She's going to be talking to us about ways that we can manage cross-functional leadership that truly inspires our teams. Rosa is currently a director of product management for ServiceNow, where she leads the customer success team. Prior to ServiceNow, Rosa spent 7 years at eBay, where she held leadership positions in the consumer selling business, leading teams in product management, strategy, and product marketing. She's going to talk to us specifically about overcoming a no, 5 keys to escalating effectively. Welcome to the stage, Rosa.
I want to talk with you today about the consequences of hearing no and not getting what you want. I'll share some keys on how to overcome the no. But first, I want to hear from you in the chat. What has been the most consequential no that you've received in your professional life? I want to take us back. I'm 9 years old and I'm sitting in a hard plastic chair facing a social worker. My family's with me. My mom and my brother, age 7 on one side, my dad's on the other. And we're facing a social worker who doesn't speak Spanish. My parents don't speak English. And we're there to review the benefits that my family gets that help us buy food. My role is as translator. And the consequences feel sky high. If it goes well, if we get the outcome that we want, I still remember we celebrate, we feel good, we feel like we'll be okay. And if it doesn't go well, if I hear a no, then as a 9-year-old, I'm not entirely clear on the consequences, but I do remember that there were lean years. Hi, I'm Rosa Gonzalez Welton, Director of Product Management. That 9-year-old girl was me, and I still think about how those experiences shaped my professional life. Now, you might think those are really high stakes for a 9-year-old, and to put a 9-year-old in that spot, and I have to agree. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but I wouldn't trade it for anything either. Today, as professionals, we also face high stakes when we hear a no. And you might think that the consequences for you are not as dire. Every year, during the performance reviews, I sit in a room with other leaders, and the talk turns to whether someone might be ready for a promotion. Often the question is asked, can this person unblock themselves? Do they get stuck? And does a no derail them? If, depending on the response to that, the consequence could be no promotion. Think about that happening over and over again, where if it happens to you, and you don't get the promotion that you want, you can't get to the role that you aspire to and have the impact that you wish to have. These are long-term consequences. And I'm here today to talk with all of the women in the audience who are early to mid-career, especially in some of these larger tech companies where a lot of our work is cross-functional and we need the yes to get to success. I'm here also talking to those who manage, mentor, encourage, and support these early to mid-career women so that we can figure out how do we help them overcome no's and get to their goals. And over time, if we think about more and more of these, more of us, more women, more success that comes from overcoming a no, that starts to have real impact on things like pay equity, leadership representation. And it starts with us as individuals. Now today, I'll cover 5 keys to overcoming no. And as part of that, I'll suggest using escalations. And I want to hear from you in the chat. What's the feeling in your body when you hear the word escalation? Now, the 5 keys I'll cover today are they on your team? Find common ground. Make the case. Don't burn bridges, and keep the long game in mind. I'll illustrate these points with some stories from my early career at eBay. Okay, let me take you back to 2011. I was new to the Bay Area, just joined eBay. I had worked at a startup in LA, and I was excited about my first big product. And essentially the goal of my product was to introduce a badge, an evaluation, a signal for buyers that would help them know which items were from those sellers who were doing everything right. These were sellers who got the best feedback. These sellers offered a return in case it was needed. They shipped the item out the door quickly, and they offered a tracking number. And today we take tracking numbers for granted, but in 2011, we were still changing some of the behaviors in the marketplace. I had my roadshow deck ready to go. I had data, customer insights, competitive analysis, and I took this deck and I went and talked to all the many teams that were involved. And it touched almost every team in the marketplace. The team that was responsible for the entire buyer experience, which is where a buyer would find an item, review it, and select it. It was also touched the teams that managed the seller experience, where sellers could come create a listing and set policies, as well as all the ecosystem around that, pricing, billing, shipping, cart, as well as our partners in the accounts team and marketing and customer success. So I was ready. I went and I talked to all the team, and I came back and I told my manager, everyone thinks it's a great idea. They said, go for it, Rosa. And the question came back to me, well, did you get commitment? Did they commit to your dates? Are they going to do this for you? And I realized, oops, I'm stuck. I did not do that. And I hadn't realized that I was stuck. I hadn't gotten a no. And so I assumed a yes. So that was a lesson that led to key number 1. Are they on your team? Are they on your team? In this case, I'm referring to all of our cross-functional partners. And there are many in many functions. And think of it as failing fast to get to a no that helps you pivot and take an action, have a response as a result. I had a fantastic engineering partner during this product launch, Suresh. Suresh and I we talked to all of the teams, their engineering managers, their product managers, had the conversation, went through the design discussions, architecture discussions, and it helped us really nail down, were they on the team? Were they ready to commit the engineering resources to line up with our release date? And in one case, one team couldn't do it. And so we let them borrow one of our engineers because there was the right skill set. And they were on the team. They were one team with us for that time. The second key I call find common ground. And really it's about goal alignment. I mentioned many teams thought this was a great idea, but some of the account teams told us, it won't work for us. And that led me to dig a little deeper, and I had a great conversation with a seller. And talking to sellers was one of my favorite parts of being at eBay. I learned a lot from this seller because she sold grubs. And if you've ever raised chickens, I have not. If you've raised chickens, you know they love grubs and mealworms. And this seller knew that grubs don't do so well sitting at a post office over the weekend. So she had arranged her shipping policies, her timing, all around making sure that the grubs got to the customer in time to be viable before they went bad. And so together I realized we had the same goal. We want the customer to be happy. And so that led to some exemptions to the rules that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise. The other big win in this area was in the work we did with the shipping team. We realized their goal and our goal was aligned to get items to the buyer faster. So the shipping team became a very strong ally to encourage other teams to commit, to be part of the team, to do the work. Now, before I talk about the third key, I want to address some things you might be thinking. You might be saying to yourself, hold on, Rosa, 5 keys? How much time do you think I have? I need to move fast. Or, hey, Rosa, I want to show my leader that I'm capable of handling things on my own. And by the way, escalations, they're looked down upon in my company. I hear you. And this is what I'm suggesting. Think of these keys as tools in your toolkit. You can use them as it makes sense when you feel like you might be getting stuck. And I'll provide a checklist in the resources that you can use to help you think through when to apply them. As you learn to use them and you flex your approach, you'll become a better product manager and a better leader. Speaking of which, as a leader, oftentimes escalations come to me and I welcome them because sometimes I'm the one who hasn't set the right priorities. And so the escalation is something I see as an opportunity to coach, an opportunity to unblock my team and to clarify those priorities. So here we were, coming into really the meat of our development. We were in deep. Suresh and I, we were pushing this product forward. And there was one team that couldn't meet our dates. They would have to deprioritize something on their roadmap. And so it was time to make the case. In this situation, the other team, the other product manager and engineering manager, we all agreed that we would escalate to their leader because they couldn't support us with their current roadmap. So what do? This is the point of escalation. And what's important here is to understand what are the trade-offs, what are your recommendations, how can you frame the decision for the leader so that they can make the call. And what was important here is I understood some of the other priorities that were driving the roadmap for this team. So I was very open about what would be lost, what would be gained if we got this support. And a key thing here I want to call out, if you're newer to this, there is an art to figuring out when it's time to escalate. Do it too fast, and that's a lot of wasted time, a lot of churn. Do it too slow, and even if you get a good response from that escalation, it might be too late for your project. So think about and assess the risk to being stuck to the no and figure out if it's time to escalate. I also want to address another concern that I've heard. And it takes me back to that 9-year-old girl in that office. There may be fear in talking with authority figures, especially if you're newer in your career and a conversation with an authority figure or a senior leader may have an impact on your career. And I want to encourage you to acknowledge that and work through it with a peer or a mentor. Practice, prepare, anticipate questions. Think of it as another muscle to build in making your case to your senior leadership. So I made the case to that leader of that team, and she appreciated my argument. At the end of the day, I didn't get everything I asked for, but I got enough to unblock my project. And that leads me to key number 4, don't burn bridges. Throughout that escalation, I was in communication with my counterparts. They knew the case I was making. They were part of the conversation. And I believe that's really a key to using escalations effectively. Who's been there where suddenly someone's gone over your head and they reach out to your manager and you hear from your manager, hey, what's this all about? That's not a good feeling. And I believe that's why escalations get such a bad reputation, because they're used in unexpected ways that people frankly don't welcome. So my key here is communicate. Keep your conversation channels open, keep it human, and don't burn bridges, build partnerships. The last key is to keep the long game in mind. So years later, I'm in a different role, different team. The head of the team that I was working with, the leader that I had escalated to, she was now VP of product, also in a different team. And she remembered our interaction. She remembered the exchange. And she remembered I didn't get everything I wanted, but she also remembered that I had made a fair case with persistence. And at the end of the day, the lesson for me was, though there was an escalation, it had strengthened the relationship and it had strengthened my reputation and really taught me about keeping the long game in mind. So how did this end? We launched on time. All the teams were aligned. We had a big launch and customers loved it. Buyers reacted well. Sellers reacted well. Our engineers did amazing work and were recognized for it. And the performance of the product, it exceeded our goals. Complaints from buyers went down, revenue went up. And months later, it was my manager's turn to be in the room with other leaders discussing who was ready for a promotion. And she was able to point to the work that I had done with all these teams to get everyone to row in the same direction, to overcome no's from many, many points. And the outcome of the performance reviews that year is that I was promoted to senior product manager. I want to hear from you in the chat. Share the name of someone who's been part of your success. I also want to close the loop on 9-year-old me. I was in this role as the translator 3 times. I remember that twice we celebrated, we had a good outcome, and once, well, there were some lean years. But in the end, we came together as a family. We survived. We were fine. We had enough. And I want to use this time as a call to action to women in product, new to the industry, early career, mid-career. Believe in your ideas. Practice overcoming no. Use the keys as part of your toolkit. Build your team, find your allies. You're not alone in this. Overcoming the no, it's about more than your single project. It's about your voice and amplifying your voice in the world. I want to hear your voice. I want to see what you can do.
Thank you, Rosa. Up next, we have Paola Ríos Schaaf and Pamela Roux Castillo. And they're in conversation session, brief, simple, and visual. Lead with storytelling. Paola leads a team of product managers building services and tools that enable delightful shopping experiences as the Associate Director of Product at Wayfair. Rosa is really passionate about Latinx representation in leadership and also connecting women to help each other grow professionally and personally. She is also an acting board member of the Latinas in Tech Boston chapter. Pamela Roux Castillo is a mission-driven product leader, financial industry expert, and billionaire whisperer with a passion for data visualization and analytics. Pamela manages the development and economic suite of products for Bloomberg, where she focuses on search, discoverability, and analytics as it relates to economic data. Welcome to the stage, Paola and Pamela.
My name is Paola Ríos Schaaf. I'm an Associate Director of Product at Wayfair. I have worked in retail and educational technology. I have experience in e-commerce, customer-facing, and B2B products.
My name is Pamela Roux. I'm a product manager at Bloomberg where I focus on economic apps. Previously, I worked in investment banking, focusing on clients in the US and Latin America.
So, did those introductions feel memorable to you? We assume you're not here to learn facts about me and Pam. So, we'd like to try that again, but this time, we will lead with storytelling. Hi, my name is Paola. I'm from Lima. I have lived in Boston over 24 years. I'm a product leader, and throughout my career, I discovered my passion for leadership, team building, and representation. As a Latin American, I serve as a board member of Latinas in Tech Boston. I also volunteer at the Museum of Fine Arts. I lead tours tailored to people with disabilities. The goal is to make art and experiences at the museum accessible to everyone. Pam and I would like to share a story, the story of how we got here. Last summer, we participated in a 3-day course. It was focused on mindfulness and leadership, the Search Inside Yourself program. We are big advocates of mental health and believe that meditation relieves stress, promotes creativity, and enhances our daily life experiences.
During the program, we were paired to practice meditation for 30 days and make it a part of our daily routine. Since then, we check in every Thursday. We talk about everything from how to be a better PM to personal branding. But more importantly, we learn a lot from each other and have become good friends. I'm a first-generation Mexican-American from South Texas. My first language was Spanish, so as a child, I struggled to read, and I hated presenting in front of the class. So instead, I fell in love with math. I'm proud to say that at Bloomberg, I built a product for billionaires, and I've met over 20 of them. I've also been featured on TV interviews, and being on TV is what got my mom really excited about my career. In her eyes, I've reached telenovela star status. Paola and I share a background in product, and despite our experience in different industries, we've benefited from our collaboration.
We have never met in person, yet our friendship and communication has enhanced our professional lives and opened door to opportunities like this one right here, speaking with you today. So there it is. We hope that you have found our story a tad bit more compelling than our initial intros. Now the question is, why are we here? Many of you have experienced this. You're the smartest person in the room. You know, you have the knowledge, you have the data, the analytical skills, you know all the details really well, and yet you fall short delivering your message.
And that is why our main goal today is to share what we have learned. We want to help you get to the next step in your career because we deeply believe we need more women in leadership roles. We know that many of you have at least one great product or startup idea, and for that idea to get traction, you must become a great storyteller. Let's look at some of the data on women leadership. In 2020, women-led startups received just 2.3% of VC funding. Additionally, only 12% of decision makers at VC funds are women. And as of January 2021, women held only 6.2% of CEO roles in S&P 500 companies. Now think about that for a second. As a community, how do we help elevate each other's careers? How do we drive more women into leadership positions? You, me, us, we're here. We're showing up to do just that. So we're already aiming at that goal. Today, we will focus on becoming an effective communicator, which is an essential leadership skill. To share your ideas effectively, you have to be a great storyteller. Sharing your story will allow you to attract investors, get stakeholders excited about your vision, and persuade your engineers to follow you on your product journey. Here's an example from a compelling storyteller.
And so she says, "Mama, want to play?" And I say, "Yes." There's nothing special about it. We play, and we're joined by her sisters, and there's a lot of laughing, and I give a dramatic reading from the book, Everybody Poops. Nothing out of the ordinary. And yet, it is extraordinary because in my pain and my panic, in the homelessness of my humblessness, I have nothing to do but pay attention. I focus. I am still. The nation I'm building, the marathon I'm running, the troops, the canvas, the high note, does not exist. All that exists are sticky fingers and gooey kisses and tiny voices and crayons and that song about letting go of whatever it is that frozen girl needs to let go of. It's all peace and simplicity. The air is so rare in this place for me that I can barely breathe. I can barely believe I'm breathing. Play is the opposite of work. And I am happy.
That was Shonda Rhimes on her year of saying yes. You can watch her full talk on TED.com or buy her book. So now, where are you at? Let's start with a bar setting exercise. To know where to invest your time, you need to know a baseline. The place where you are going to start your journey to becoming a great storyteller. So take a moment and think about three women you admire, and jot their names down. They can be notorious women, or they can be women in your life. Just take 3 seconds.
Now that you have those names, add 1 to 3 adjectives to describe why you admire them and their communication style. Let's take a few seconds.
Here are my 3 women. America Ferrara, actor, a co-founder of Si Se Puede. She Se Puede. Melanie Perkins, Australian tech entrepreneur and founder of Canva. Claire Babineau-Fontenot, Feeding America's CEO. When I think of these 3 women, these adjectives come to mind: committed, mission-driven, and innovative.
My 3 inspiring women are Melinda Gates from the Gates Foundation, Oprah Winfrey, CEO of the OWN Network, and Malala Yousafzai, Nobel Prize winner. The adjectives that describe these women are inspiring, resilient, and passionate.
I want you to think about the women that you picked and the adjectives you chose. Which of those qualities do you see in yourself? And which ones are you lacking? I want to share a quick framework with you that should help you identify your communication strengths and opportunities. Let me explain. First, think about the mode of communication. You can communicate orally or in writing, or use a combination of both. Then, think about the style of communication. Is it dominant or sociable? Dominance in this context is how decisive, authoritative, and influential you come across. Sociability speaks to how collaborative, accommodating, and supportive your communication is. For example, where I land in this diagram highly depends on who I'm talking to and where that is happening. Meeting with my team, they're a really great group. So I usually talk to them in a very relaxed conversation. Whoops. So I'll be right here. Presenting to a group like I'm doing today, it's a little different. I want to be a voice of authority as an expert of a subject. So I might be right here. Discussing a problem at work, it's different. You still want to have a friendly tone, but I usually bring something in writing with me. It helps me stay on topic and focus on solving the problem. So I might be here. Last, but most importantly, when I'm reporting progress to leadership, I always anchor on a written artifact. It can be a one-pager or a deck. This is a technique I use. Many times you won't get a chance to present or explain as much as you like. That happens when there are big personalities in a room. So having a written document plays an important role for me. So in that case, I might be here. So there you have it.
One more thing to keep in mind. In today's remote environment, we have a broken attention span. We're attached to our devices, and we're competing with social media. It is imperative that you make the most of people's short attention span. One recent personal story, I was so excited to tell my mom that I'd be speaking at this conference. And I noticed that as I was telling her, she was really distracted. So I called her out on it. And she told me, Bad Bunny was on TV and he was performing at the Grammys. So now I'm competing with Bad Bunny for my mom's attention.
And we all know that can be a really tough thing. So back to our framework. There's no right and wrong here. Where you land, whether it's more sociable, more dominant, it actually should speak to where you are and who your audience is. That will help you deliver your message most effectively. And let's accept it. There's always room for improvement. In my case, I rant. Like many Latin Americans, I'm loud, speak with my hands, and I love to tell a story. That story can run pretty long. So knowing who and where you're communicating will always help you figure out how to best tell your story. And with that, let's move on to, so how do you lead with storytelling? At the core, I believe we have 3 pillars that help us excel in being good storytellers. Write well, speak authentically, and use visuals. So let's start with writing to your advantage.
Now, do you know what's surprising about goldfish? And no, it's not that they're usually in Japanese Zen gardens, although that's true. The goldfish is known to have an attention span of only 9 seconds. And according to research at Microsoft, humans have a declining attention span, and you lose them in less than 8 seconds. This is a highly controversial topic, but if true, then that means that you're better off presenting to goldfish than humans.
So how do you make the most out of those 8 seconds? Sit down and write. Writing is one of the most undervalued skills in business. To do it well, there's no magic. Just do the obvious. Number 1, act on it. Sit down and write something, anything. 2, practice. The more you practice, the better you will get at it. And 3, seek feedback. Remember, almost nothing in this life is better when you do it alone. So now I'm going to move to my top tips. This might sound a little bit like a long list, but I anchor it on 2 main themes. Get to the point and ruthlessly edit. So how do we get to the point? Avoid jargon. Simple sentences and good grammar win every single time. Make it short. This is where formatting truly matters. The shorter it is and the shorter it looks, the higher chance you'll have that somebody will read it. Use data and examples. They truly illustrate your point in a tangible way. Think about the data we presented today. These very sad numbers. Maybe you knew some of them already. That doesn't really matter. What I really hope is that they pulled you in. That engagement is what matters. Remove unnecessary complexity. Yes, we know you're the expert, but think about who you're writing for and the level of details that they need. Finally, use this acronym, BLOT. Bottom line on top. Executives love and look for the bottom line. Before any of the details, believe me, trust me, this is true. Every time you write something, simply assume your audience doesn't have any time to read it. That brings me to the second point. Edit ruthlessly. Avoid all flowery language. Try this. Next time you write an email, consciously remove all adjectives and adverbs. It will surprise you, but less can be more. Be a fierce self-editor. Read your stuff out loud and find a really good peer reviewer. I use my husband all the time. He doesn't even know what I do for work, and that might appear to be a disadvantage, but it actually works great for me. As a non-native speaker, he helps me improve on my English and surfaces the exact places where I've missed the mark and I've missed the obvious. Keep it brief and simple.
One last thought. If you love reading, you might be a fan of a good novel or an autobiography, and Homer's Odyssey has its time and place. But when you think about your business writing, lean into something different. Think short stories, poems, a haiku maybe. Short forms use words selectively, yet achieve their intended goal.
And now, embrace your voice. So we covered writing. Now you have to put yourself out there and speak. You might be doing a pre-recorded presentation like this one, or speaking in front of a live audience, 1 or 1,000 people. Our advice will stay the same.
First, prepare. Preparation is power. It makes you feel ready and confident, especially if you tend to get a little nervous. How do you prepare? Look at your environment and be curious about any conversation. Notice your friends at dinner, chat with colleagues. Who speaks well? Who do you engage with the best? How would you describe their conversation style? Practice out loud. We practiced this presentation 6 times. Third, record yourself. This can be super uncomfortable, unless obviously you're an influencer. But when you see yourself speak, you can pick up on the things that you like and see the places where you need to tweak your delivery. Last, as you get more comfortable, share and ask for feedback. I've done many interview prep conversations with friends. Again, it's always better to be with someone than alone.
Start with the conclusion. We've discussed the concept of BLOT, bottom line on top in writing. The same is true with verbal communication. Use the pyramid principle, also known as answer first communication. At the top of our presentation, Pam said, "Today, we will focus on becoming an effective communicator, an essential leadership skill." By this point, I hope you feel we're getting there. Finally, and most importantly, be authentic. There's a ton of research out there of how you should sound, how your voice pitch either helps or hurts your ability to reach those coveted C-level roles, and how you should constantly be searching in your soul for your authentic voice, bringing your true self to work. I want to simplify that for you. Authenticity in communication is your best friend. I don't have the perfect voice. My voice is too high-pitched, a little whiny, loud. To top that off, I speak too fast, stumble on my words, and have an accent. All these things, according to research and some bloggers' opinions, could truly hinder me from leadership roles. I cannot change who I am. And actually, I choose not to. Here's why. If I focus on my speed, on my pitch, and on the perfect delivery, I'm just going to miss the focus on my point and my content. My accent is not going away. Being passionate about representation, I'm actually very happy that Latinas out there will see me, listen to me, and all the mistakes I've made today, only to realize that their accent is not an issue. So yes, prepare, practice, learn how to use your voice, its tone, the volume for emphasis. But first and most importantly, be you. Being here with you today is enough proof for me that my voice will take me to the places that I want to go. So go out and embrace yours.
And now, snapshot your message. Pre-COVID, in-person presentations had a higher level of engagement because we're all stuck in the same room. But today, you're competing for your audience's attention against Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, kids, pets, and in my case, Bad Bunny. So always remember, it's as if you're presenting to a school of goldfish. So leverage visuals. According to Harvard Business Review, if you hear a piece of information, 3 days later, you'll only remember 10% of it. If you add a picture, you're likely to remember 65% of it. Now, let's look at some examples. First, use data. Start your presentation with the one main data point. What do you think of when you see 8 million? You might think, oh, this is close to the population of New York City. Now, what if I told you that 8 million represents the number of people that lost their jobs in the restaurant industry due to the pandemic? What did you feel hearing that? Remember, numbers tell a story, and if delivered right, are also tied to emotions. Earlier in the presentation, Paola showed you percentages that represented women in leadership positions and VC funding. Showing the number helps your audience recall and makes your point stronger. Second, use visuals. Here's another example of how to support an idea with visual data. On this graph, you can see the restaurant industry's collapse in different US cities. Having a visual is more effective than just reading bullet points on a slide. During the presentation today, I showed you images of a goldfish and women that inspire us. How many of you can recall at least 2 of the women mentioned today? Lastly, use icons. Our last example shows how you can leverage icons and other visual aids to support your idea. In this case, we're leveraging icons to show how a fictitious product could help solve a set of problems. Throughout our presentation, Paola held up various handheld drawings to illustrate our ideas. Try experimenting with visualization in your next presentation.
To sum up, to become a great storyteller, write to your advantage, embrace your voice, and make sure you snapshot that message. Here's one more clip from an inspirational storyteller, a NASA space engineer, Diana Trujillo.
I wanted to live a life where my whole self is sufficient, and I don't have to feel like I need to adjust myself because I speak too much or because I speak too fast or because I speak up. Mijita is a life where I can do what it was morally correct and not feel defiant or out of place. I wanted to live a life where my whole self is sufficient, and I don't have to feel like I need to adjust myself because I speak too much or because I speak too fast or because I speak up. Mijita, is not what you said, is how you said it. I'm like, I think it's because I said something, is what you mean.
We've come to the end of this journey. To recap, we hope that you thought about your communication style and where you shine the most, found our tips for writing useful and can apply them in the near future,
Learn something new about your voice and how it truly represents you. And finally, we hope that at least one data point or visual we shared today stays with you, even if it's just that goldfish. We said earlier that nothing is better when you do it alone. So we want to thank a few people.
Virginie for the masterful edit of the video pitch that got us here today, and for the patience to listen to our presentation a million times.
And Noah, for his nice penmanship and creative spirit, his wonderful grammar, and being an awesome husband. If you liked our content, we have a cheat sheet with all the resources we use for this presentation. And in the spirit of inclusivity, we also want to share the full script with you, as we know not everyone can make it to the conference.
We like to think of ourselves as accessible leaders, so we welcome you to contact us and are excited to hear from you. Gracias. Hasta pronto.
Gracias. Hasta pronto.
Thank you so much to Rosa, Paola, and Pamela for speaking with us today. I hope you enjoyed their discussions as much as I did. Coming up tomorrow on the stage, we have Catapulting from Change.